It is 6 o'clock. We are due to start, but one councillor has just phoned in. She's parking a car because the council car park is full. So, Councillor Kershid, so she was here for the whole evening yesterday. So I think I'd allow her a few minutes to get here. Otherwise, if we start, then she's not allowed to take part. Good. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the reconvened meeting of Development and Management Committee. I'll just read out some announcement. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public. A recording of the meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. In-person attendees are required to wear masks on entry into the building and meeting room, but may remove them once seated. Would members and officers please remember to switch microphones on when speaking and off when finished. Please speak directly into the microphone. Would in-person attendees please switch off mobile phones and put on silent mode. Scan the NHS QR poster at the entrance of the council chamber on your way out. Those joining by Teams, may I remind you that the chat box should not be used for questions or comments. So we'll go straight on to Andrew Lambourne, representing Applicant. Are you here, Andrew? Are you on Teams?
Yes.
You're virtual.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can see you and hear you. If you can you come a little bit closer to the microphone?
How's that?
That's fine. That's fine. So are you ready to start? Then away you go. You've got up to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. I want to focus on one specific area this evening, that of risk. From the application documents and committee reports and what we heard yesterday, even though some of it didn't sound as balanced as it could have been, one of the main impacts of this proposal will be increased noise on communities in Luton and elsewhere, risking people's health and well-being. In particular, it brings a further 724 homes into what is called significant adverse impact. What also seems clear from the committee report is that 1 million passengers either way isn't going to make or break the local economy. The jobs and economic benefits of expanding this airport in a responsible and well-managed way towards 18 million passengers over 15 years were well documented at the time and still stand. Nothing which was discussed yesterday puts that at risk. What is risky, however, is to vote in favour of a planning application which is not soundly based. In this particular case, as we have identified, key data on which the noise impacts are assessed is questionable because there is no reliable baseline showing you what those impacts would have been each year had the airport been managed responsibly. The noise consultant admits the information is confusing, and without going into technical detail, we have identified obvious errors within it. Secondly, to pass this application would legitimise mismanagement of the airport through releasing too much capacity before the noise of the flights had been reduced, as well as the questionable financial incentivisation your council put in place without, it seems, the scrutiny it was legally obliged to produce as well. Thirdly, even if further expansion is conditioned, you and we can have no confidence in the promises of the undertakings given by an airport operator which has so clearly failed to honour them in the past. Not just breaches of condition, but also the submission of a noise action plan to the government in which it promised to operate within its noise contour limits, even when it knew it wasn't. Finally, and this is due to the way this incentivisation has been set up, there is risk that the agenda for the airport is now being set by its dominant airline, Wizz. These aircraft, as you may recall, form the majority of those which continued to fly during the first lockdown, servicing holiday resorts, as well as occasionally bringing in supplies. This application has attracted massive opposition from communities, with nearly 1,000 people taking the trouble to register their reasons why they don't want their quality of life to be degraded further, after 3 years of misery which only COVID, not the airport operator, ended. There is no mitigation for the wider area. Airspace modernisation is still 10 years away, and new planes which Wizz is bringing in are simply getting bigger rather than perceptibly quieter. Nevertheless, a decision has to be made. In making a decision in favour of the application, there is a risk that all of the factors mentioned above may weaken it should it ever be challenged. In making a decision against the application, it can easily be argued that the airport clearly has headroom to grow at the moment. That is the case for ignoring the noise impacts is not well founded, and that the local economy will obviously benefit as the airport bounces back. On balance, councillors, we therefore urge you, having carefully considered all that has been said, to reject this application in order to minimise risk. Thank you.
No. Please, John.
Chair, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is John Steele, and I'm here merely to look at the legal matters. I am not here to give evidence, I must add that. And I also know that Mr. Vernon Cole, who is the expert noise consultant, is online at the moment. He's not present in the room, but he is able to hear all that is taking place. What I have done is take instructions upon a number of points which Applicant have made in order that these can be succinctly put and even I can understand them, as it were, and not go into all the details which would otherwise we need to go into if they were given a very full answer, which we haven't got time for, Chair, this evening. The first point is in relation to a mismatch in areas. And this has been made in terms of noise contours, that the wrong areas have been taken, and that an area which has been taken is one which is too small and is also one which is not the one which is up to date. The instructions which I have received from Mr. Cole are that the difference between the 2019 situation and one which was in 2020 is due to the A321neo, which was discussed yesterday, and the aircraft. The aircraft was found not to be as optimistically beneficial as they had first of all thought, they being the people who had first of all released the aircraft, Airbus, and also those who were using it in terms of the noise contours and airports. As a result of the lack of optimism, as it were, in other words, the failure to achieve what it thought it was going to achieve, the contours were reconsidered between 2019 December, when the environmental statement was first of all put out, and 2020, when there was a further report which updated the A321neo contour consequences. That particular consequence was not put forward in a contour form, but it was in a table. And the table, just if anybody wishes to look at that, is found on, it is on PDF form at page 314 of the ES, and the table there is able to be considered as one with a number of figures on it in Appendix 8C. Without going into the details, Chair, the consequence of this is that there's been a misunderstanding, I'm advised by Mr. Cole, by Applicant, of the position in relation to the contours and the application of the table. The table is not to be placed with its 35.5 area into a previous contour. And that misunderstanding is, Chair, meaning this at the end of all of what I've explained, and that is that there is no material change in the evidence and also the advice that Mr. Cole is giving to this inquiry. I beg your pardon, to this meeting. The next point is about, and it's just been mentioned just now by Mr. Lambourne, and that is the inappropriate baseline point. The inappropriate baseline is considered again in the evidence and also the advice of Mr. Cole. That particular matter was first of all started with a baseline of what Mr. Cole thought might be helpful, he explained to me, and that was what was experienced on the ground in 2019. And that was the 18 MPPA figure in terms of that particular control. So everybody underneath the aircraft taking off areas and also the contour areas would have experienced that particular factor. That's why he took it as being the experience baseline, not all about the calculations and everything else. And his point was that there would be, when it comes back to that later on, and we saw that that would be the case later on in 2028, when it's predicted that that would be the case, that would be very little difference and not a significant difference in terms of virtually indistinguishable, is his advice to me, with respect to what actually happens between 18 MPPA and 19 MPPA. The reason why in the future 2028 has been taken is because that is the prediction which is based upon the original planning permission of 2012. And 2012 found that it would be acceptable to have 18 MPPA as being the control. When is that likely to happen in terms of the best available evidence? Mr. Cole tells me that that will be in 2028. So the coincidence of the two, and that's why that has been taken. So, Chair, the situation then is again that his particular advice to this meeting and the council is that there's very little difference between one, that's to say 2018 and 2020, sorry, beg your pardon, 2028, 18 MPPA and 19 MPPA if it was to increase to that. That is the consequence of all those particular matters. There's one further matter which I wish to raise, and that concerns further correspondence which has been received from Ladakhan today. I don't want to take any hairs running, and that is just to place on record my advice in respect to the legal advice with respect to the effect of the very recent Act of Parliament, and that is the Environmental Act of 2021, which came into force in November this month of 2021. The position is, and again, in terms of legal advice, that there would be no material change that I would advise in relation to the consequences of this act coming into force as far as one can judge. And the future situation is always a matter for the government as the way in which it will be brought into effect. And there are many factors which will take place as a consequence of the act, which are not necessarily going to have any effect and not necessarily predictable at this particular stage. So for all those reasons, there is no change in accordance with what I have understood from Mr. Cole and also my advice in relation to the reports and advice given to this meeting. And Mr. Cole, Chair, is online, and what I would like, if I may, through you, is just to ensure that I have accurately put forward what he has said and his advice, if that can be stated now.
Yes, please. Who wants to comment?
Yes. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. Yes, I think Mr. Steele summarises the position fairly. If there are any queries or clarifications or any further questions, I'm available to answer them. I think the important consideration in relation to the noise contour areas and the potential mismatch between the 29.9 kilometre square contour and what Mr. Lambourne quotes as the 35.5 kilometre contour. There are no figures in this application that show a 35.5 kilometre contour. The revised analysis that was undertaken by Bickerdike Allen in 2020 contained only tabulated contour areas. It did not contain any contour figures. In relation to the inappropriate baseline, I think the key issue here, as Mr. Steele points out, is that in 2028, the noise levels that are deemed acceptable are known through the condition applied in the 2014 consent. Therefore, that is the basis against which any change in noise levels by that date need to be assessed if an additional 1 million passengers per annum are to be permitted. That is the essence of the position. That's all I say for now, but as I say, I'm available for clarification if anything is required.
5 minutes.
Okay, so you stay online.
I will do. I'll stay online.
Yeah, because it'll be the applicants now and then members' questions and comments. So there may be some questions and comments that you can answer.
No problem.
Okay. So I'll now ask the applicants to make their presentation, please. Up to a half an hour, if you wish to use that amount of time.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Good evening. My name is Alejo Perez Monsalvo, and I'm the Development Director for the Applicant, London Luton Airport Operations Limited. In responding on behalf of the airport, I will first explain the importance and reasons for this application, and then briefly provide a voice for those who have shared with us and the committee their support for our proposal. Granting permission for the application will enable the airport to, first, provide the best possible footing for the airport to bounce back in the long term and help the local and national economy recover from the pandemic. Second, to safeguard and provide jobs for the local and wider economy. Third, to strengthen vital transport links for businesses and individuals regionally and with the rest of the world. Fourth, to continue to be a cornerstone of the local and regional economy, delivering benefits for residents, businesses, and passengers. Fifth, to make the most efficient and best use of our existing site and facilities in line with government policy without the need for additional construction. And sixth, to provide reassurance to our airlines that there is space for them to grow and accommodate new routes. Without this, Luton Airport is in danger of losing out to those London airports who do have capacity, giving airlines the opportunity to relocate based aircraft and withdraw existing routes too. So what's the role of Luton Airport in this area? Pre-COVID, Luton Airport contributed over £3,400 to the UK economy every minute of every day. This application enables us the best opportunity to return to these levels and to help the airport achieve its full potential as an economic driver for the Three Counties region and the UK more widely. The airport is one of the largest employers in the region. In 2019, the airport employed over 10,000 people directly, with another 18,000 employed in the supply chain. 35% of our spend, almost £50 million a year, is made within a 20-mile radius of the airport. In this context, Luton Airport is a key economic driver within the region, delivering significant employment and providing substantial benefits to the wider economy by facilitating travel for business passengers and for inbound visitors. Without this change, the artificial capacity constraint means London Luton Airport will be at a significant disadvantage in its recovery compared to other airports, damaging the economy, recovery of Luton, and the wider local area. So you may ask, why are we submitting this application? You wonder why we're submitting this application now during a period of such uncertainty. Well, the effect of the pandemic on aviation is well documented. At Luton, passenger numbers dropped by 72% from 18 million in 2019 to just 5.4 million in 2020. We say this is precisely why we need to act now, to ensure there is no additional impediment to our recovery. Much has changed since the Council granted permission for 18 million passengers in 2014. Therefore, halfway through the current concession period to 2032 and post-pandemic, it is absolutely the right time to refresh and update what the future for the airport looks like. It is our view that this committee should endorse the officer's recommendation and resolve to grant permission to grow Luton Airport to 19 million passengers for the following 6 reasons. First one, meeting forecast passenger demand. Forecasts based on the best information at the time estimated that an 18 million passenger cap would accommodate growth in passenger numbers up until 2028. However, at all London airports, and indeed across many others in the UK, growth in passenger numbers occurred at a more rapid rate, hence the 18 million passenger cap reached in 2019. Despite the pandemic, passenger numbers are expected to return to these levels in around 2024. If future capacity is not available, then there is a risk that airlines, which plan new routes a year or more in advance, will leave Luton Airport to secure the capacity and certainty they need to recover and grow elsewhere. The master plan submitted with the application and ratified by the Council demonstrates that the proposed increase to 19 million passengers could be accommodated without the need for any further development, as the existing internal facilities can be modified to support the increase in passenger numbers. Second reason, creating jobs and supporting the local economy. As already highlighted, the airport is one of the largest employers in the region. Again, in 2019, the airport employed over 10,000 people directly, with another 18,000 employed in the supply chain. These are real jobs, livelihoods, and rewarded and well-paid careers that benefit local communities. The airport is a key economic driver, facilitating travel for business passengers and for inbound visitors. Indeed, the airport plays a vital role in supporting the tourism sector, providing easy access to overseas markets, including destinations throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Increasing the capacity of the airport to support an additional 1 million passengers will accelerate the airport's recovery from the pandemic by allowing existing partners to grow and providing the opportunity to attract new airlines. It will also help to safeguard the long-term economic well-being of the airport and town. This has a direct link to the Council's 2020 to 2040 strategic vision, which recognizes that, and I quote, "The COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on our economy, causing the deepest recession on record." The strategic vision goes on to say that, and I quote again, "The Council's immediate priority must be to secure a strong and sustainable economic recovery which protects jobs, incomes, and businesses across Luton over the next 2 to 3 years." Refusing permission will be contrary to paragraph 81 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which states that decisions should help create the conditions in which businesses can invest, expand, and adapt. Significant weight should therefore be placed on the need to support economic growth and productivity, taking into account both local business needs and wider opportunities for development. Third reason, national policy support for aviation. Recognizing the important economic role of the UK's airports, it is the government's policy objective, as set out in the Aviation Policy Framework, Airports National Policy Statement, and Making Best Use, that airports such as Luton should make best use of their existing runways. Indeed, the government has very recently reaffirmed its policy position in a series of announcements, including the Jet Zero 2021 consultation, which stated unequivocally that the airport's national policy statement and making best use are the most up-to-date policies on planning for airport development, and that they continue to have full effect as a material consideration in decision-taking on planning applications. Our application, which includes our updated master plan, responds directly to this policy by increasing Luton Airport's capacity by an additional 1 million passengers without the development of any additional infrastructure. And this weighs significantly in favor of granting planning permission. Fourth reason, compliance with the planning policy. We have demonstrated, and the Council's officers have agreed, that our application is in accordance with national and local planning policy when read as a whole, and that the environmental impacts associated with an additional 1 million passengers have been appropriately mitigated and are acceptable. There is a dedicated planning policy for the airport within the Luton Local Plan 2011-2031 through policy LLP6. Again, our planning application has demonstrated that the nature and scale of the proposals are in accordance with this policy, and that our plans will continue to support and facilitate the associated growth of business and industry, including aviation engineering, distribution, and service sectors that are important for Luton, the sub-regional economy, and for regenerating the wider conurbation. The importance of the airport to the local economy is recognized in the committee report, which states at paragraph 212 that real economic benefits will be delivered as a result of the expansion proposals. And this weighs heavily in favor of the proposed development, and in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework, should be given significant weight. Fifth reason, appropriately managing our noise effects. We have heard many passionate pleas from those opposed to this application. We have listened very carefully to their concerns, as we have always done, and we will continue to do so. The modification to condition 10 of the 2014 permission is required in order to account for those factors outside of our direct control, including delays to the technological aircraft development, such as the Boeing 737 MAX, delays to flying times due to European air traffic control disruptions and extreme weather events that are a result in aircraft flying off schedule from the day into the night period and vice versa. These delays, which are outside of the control of the airport, are excluded from the noise restrictions at London's designated airports. The application, therefore, provides an appropriate balance between environmental protection and growth. As set out in our environmental statement and confirmed in the local authority's noise consultants report, the 0.7% increase in aircraft movements, which equates to 3 flights a day, is not of a sufficient scale or extent to warrant refusal on noise grounds alone. The amended condition also comes with an enhanced noise mitigation package and Section 106 agreement that will address the noise effects of our proposals. A noise insulation scheme will be offered to all properties that experience significant noise levels. There is no cap on this noise insulation scheme, and we propose to increase the amount offered to each property. This increase will be captured in the addendum to the Section 106 that accompanies this application. The airport will also incentivize airlines introducing the next generation aircraft operating out of Luton. Our largest airline partners have already confirmed their commitment to this transformation. Only last month, Wizz Air placed an order for 196 new Airbus Neo aircraft with the next generation engines. We are already beginning to see these new aircraft operating from Luton. In 2019, it was 1 in 10. This will increase to 1 in 2 before 2028. Officers have concluded that overall, the proposed measures that the airport will take, combined with the incentivization scheme to airlines and the steady decline in the noise associated with the technological advances, weighs in favor of granting planning permission. Sixth reason, sustainable aviation growth. We have heard the concerns about the climate change impacts of aviation and of our proposals. In response, we have made an ambitious commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2026 and deliver net zero carbon for the airport's direct operational emissions by 2040. Work is already underway at the airport to reduce our carbon footprint. In the 4-year period up to 2019, we reduced our airport emissions by over 30%, despite a 23% increase in passenger numbers during the same period. We recognize, however, that there is more to do. That's why, as part of this application, we have presented a carbon reduction plan that addresses all ground-based activity, including Scope 1, 2, and relevant Scope 3 emissions. And the proposed planning conditions will ensure that the objectives of the carbon reduction plan are realized by securing the production, implementation, and review of a carbon reduction strategy. The Section 106 legal agreement will also secure the independent monitoring of the carbon reduction strategy. Moreover, it should be noted that how emissions from aviation are managed is a matter for government policy, not local authorities. Regardless, the emissions associated with the proposed application won't be significant, and the emissions will not undermine the government's carbon commitments. Government policy does not support applying capacity constraints as the way to tackle climate change. Instead, it sees the route to net zero through technological advances and behavioral change. In conclusion, Chair, members of the committee, our proposals represent a carefully balanced approach to accommodating passenger demand at Luton Airport, which makes best use of the airport's existing infrastructure and strikes the right balance between delivering economic benefits and mitigating environmental impacts. I therefore urge the committee to accept its officer's recommendation and approve the planning application. Thank you. While now I will hand the microphone to my colleague Neil Bradford, who will share with you the voice of others, as I stated at the beginning.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, committee. Thank you very much. Over the past 18 months of consultation, hundreds of supporters have given their support for our application and their endorsement for our plans. And many who responded are large groups, public organisations, private organisations that represent a wide range of membership across the 3 counties. So with their permission, I'm just going to read extracts from their letters of support. So representing the voice of business, a combined letter from the Federation of Small Business, that's the FSB, Bedfordshire Chamber of Commerce and the Confederation of British Industry, the CBI. They write, between us, we represent over 1,500 businesses in the 3 counties region, supporting countless jobs, many of whom rely on or are part of the airport supply chain. The airport is vital to the success of the 3 counties, and its growth ambition shows confidence that the aviation sector is ready to play a leading role in the region's post-COVID recovery. Aviation will be a key driver of our economic recovery, both here in Bedfordshire and beyond, and we hope that the Planning Committee will take this into consideration when deliberating over these proposals. Representing one of our key charity partners, the CEO of the Bedfordshire and Luton Community Foundation, Karen Perkins, wrote, London Luton Airport plays a hugely important role in the local community, which should not be underestimated. The Operators Community Trust Fund was set up specifically to help small local charities and organisations across Beds, Herts and Bucks who otherwise may not have access to funding streams. Over the 3 years until March 2020, almost £400,000 has been awarded through 72 grants, benefiting almost 42,000 people through local charities, non-profit organisations and community groups across Beds, Herts and Bucks. We fully support this application to ensure the airport can continue supporting our community, not only through the jobs it provides, but also through its valuable community trust fund and other community-focused activities. And the final letter I want to read out is from the Voice of the Workers, a letter from Jeff Hodge, Unite the Union. I'm writing to you in my capacity as the Regional Officer of Unite the Union, representing workers at London Luton Airport. On behalf of our members, and indeed everyone employed in connection with the airport, I wanted to formally record Unite's support for this planning application. Workers directly employed at the airport account for 10% of employment in the borough of Luton, and almost 80% of all employees at the airport live in Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire and Hertfordshire. Luton was particularly badly hit by the economic impacts of the pandemic, leaving my members facing months of worry and uncertainty about their future. Unite will always support the need for a sustainable expansion of any infrastructure or facility that can demonstrate a safe and sustainable work environment that does not harm the workforce, the facilities, neighbours and the wider environment. Unite is convinced of the need to allow Luton Airport to expand to meet forecast demand and is assured that that could be achieved sustainably. Therefore, it is our position that the proposal must be approved to give Luton the best and quickest chance of recovery and continue to support the jobs and livelihoods of thousands, from aircrew to taxi drivers to shop staff and beyond. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members. That concludes our address.
Questions by members? Councillor Hussain. Councillor Abbas.
Can I ask you, taking into account all the benefit and economic benefit and all the other things that you have mentioned, as you remember yesterday, I asked the question in terms of the two particular areas, which one of them that myself and the chair and the vice chair represent, which is immediately under the fly path. You have not mentioned in terms of improving the environment in those particular areas. And, you know, that is a concern to me and to other members. So I will be, perhaps when this come to a conclusion, be asking for an extra condition to be put on that investment in the environment. Now, how supportive are you to those areas of the town which are immediately under the flight path?
Hi there, yes, Ollie Jacob. I think the simple answer to that, Councillor, is we're incredibly committed. You know, we're local residents, we're local employees, we have a dedicated community trust fund that we target on specific areas like yours. And my only advice would be, let's have the conversation. Let's find ways that we can work better together.
This is great.
If you don't keep quiet, then I'll ask for the gallery to be cleared. OK, you're welcome to attend. You're welcome to attend, providing you keep quiet. OK, any more introductions? Any more interruptions and you'll be thrown out. Can we clear the gallery, please?
Cancel the expansion. This is a disgrace. What about the environment? What about the environment? What about the planet? There's nobody care. People drowning, dying, burning. It's great. How should we think about increasing it? You should not read what they want to do. You talk about the job. Job. You've got the job.
Well, precarious bloody job. Attacking them before Christmas. That's the kind of job. You're bloody job.
Okay, I think Councillor Hussain, did you have a supplementary question?
I had to, I'm aware of the community grants, and I'm aware of the other things. I had the privilege of sitting on all the planning applications previously to 18 million and to this. One of the things that we probably had not is in terms of the areas that immediately, for instance, Cudno Field, Stockwood Park, which comes immediately under the fly path. This is where I'm asking your commitments as an applicant, is what you are proposing, because I will be asking the committee for an amendment to be put into all the condition that they're put in, is to show whether you're planting the trees, whether you're doing improving the parks and all those things. Wigmore Park is very welcome, but we also want to see the areas which are immediately impacted to have a quality of life improved. So I'm asking you again, what is your proposal? Otherwise, I will be pushing for the amendment.
Specifically in terms of improving the environment, sort of the physical environment, there is no specific plan laid out in this application. But as I said to you before, there are pots of cash that can be diverted to those sorts of and types of projects. So I think the key for us is to understand more specifically exactly what it is you would like to see. And as I said before, we're absolutely open to those conversations and understanding more.
Chair, if I may. Chair? Yeah, Chair, specifically, the amendments that I'm asking is A, the Cudno Field, which is immediately under the flight path of landing as well as takeoff, planting more trees. In terms of Stockwood, it's going through a business case at the moment for improve the park, which means turning into a country park, planting more trees, having a better environment for the communities of Slip End, Caddington, Luton, Pepperstock, all those people that were here very vociferous opposing it, so that they can have a 4-star, 5-star facilities on their doorstep. So could we then say that there is a commitment on your part so that we can improve a community parks, which is not just for the benefit of people of Luton, but also the benefit of the communities in Hertfordshire, as well as the rest of Bedfordshire? Mention any figures, because business case is still being made. So therefore, I'm not the expert on those, and neither would I know that what the cost would be. I'm just saying in terms of your commitments that that is a proposal, an amendment that I'll be putting forward.
Yeah, I think the best thing to say is we are completely committed to engaging in that conversation and understanding specifically the proposals, and then understanding the ways in which we can try and support that. I mean, that's not understanding the specifics. It's impossible for me to go any further at this stage, but I'm personally committed to come out and understand more.
Yeah, I think if the Dallow and well, Farley, especially Farley and Southwold councils meet with the airport, because we're very familiar with the layout there, and especially the Cudno Road playing fields is a massive open space that is underused and is ideal to plant trees, which will last a very, very long time, which is more or less immediately under the flight path. So if we can meet with them at a later date from the wards to discuss the environmental improvements that we'd like to see.
Yeah, completely
outside the airport perimeter, and especially under the flight paths.
It's a great suggestion. Yep. Yeah.
Abbas Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. And just coming off Councillor Hussain, I will be seconding that amendment, and I think it should be minuted that the airport operations team need to have that meeting. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be minuted as well. Coming off yesterday now, a few of the objectors yesterday were complaining about night flights and everything. If you turn to page 75, paragraph 192, are you sticking to your existing timetable for what is stated in paragraph 192 to eliminate those night flights by those objectors yesterday? Nicola, do you have a report agenda pack? Yeah, so page 75. 192.
192.
Yeah.
192.
Sorry, Aleko. Because there was a lot of criticism about night flights yesterday. But obviously you're not looking to change your timetable. So that is that what's written in 192? The hours stated in there are still exactly the same? So there are movement caps in relation to hours of 11:30 to 6 o'clock referred as a night quota period, and also 6 to 7 referred as early morning shoulder period. I mean, then it gives you all the how many flights you have and everything in that paragraph. I mean, if you want me to read all of it, I can, but
Those quota counts and planning restrictions don't change.
so they don't change, so they are perfectly fine, yeah, as they are. Okay, thank you. And if you turn to on the same agenda, page 89, which was a concern that I picked up. So is that by the highways? I think Chris is not here, but is he online? Oh, okay. So it was picked up by highways. The airport does not encourage cycling improvements. I mean, for their staff. Is the second paragraph down LBC highways on page 89.
Yeah. Appendix 2.
Is the question, do we not encourage
Yeah,
cycling?
so, I mean, highways have said, so expected the proposal will not result in significant impact upon the existing transport network. Unfortunate that no cycling improvements are proposed, would encourage proposals to be put forward to promote, encourage the use of cycles as means of travel to work. So
we absolutely do encouraging cycling to work. So we have a cycle to work scheme. We have dedicated cycle shelters located up at the terminal building for staff, along with showers for those that then obviously need a shower. So we absolutely do. I think this is proposing dedicated cycle paths or routes and things.
Okay.
So again, this is probably something we can pick up as further development down the line, but we absolutely actively encourage cycling to the airport for workers.
Okay. So, and other than, because I travel around the airport a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't physically have any routes from any direction, like Kipton Road, even bicycle lane coming up to the airport or around the perimeter of, what's that, President Way, plus the main road going back out again. You do not have no dedicated cycle lanes at all around the perimeter of the airport. Would you be considering that?
So we'd happily take that up and investigate whether that's something that can be located on our existing network. And I know there is an active partnership with the active travel team down at the local borough council about funding and potential solutions for that. So again, more than happy to pick up with the local authority and investigate that.
Okay, and you'd be happy for me to put that as a condition?
So just being informed as well, as part of the redevelopment of the road network around the perimeter of the airport, which is a development being undertaken by the local authority, that's also being investigated as part of that scheme.
Okay, so regarding the airport itself, yeah, so minus the local council's initiative, would you be happy for me to put a condition on the as a condition in the planning document, yeah, regarding that?
Just to clarify something, most of the areas that are subject to a condition like that are on the side of Percival Way and all the subsidiaries. All that is now subject to a future development. It's Century Park Access Road, who already got planning permission a few years ago. So we engaged with, at that time, LAL, now Luton Rising, to understand how we could connect our ambitions with theirs. Once Percival Way is transformed into a dual carriageway, it's not possible to keep the cycle lanes within that. So there's an alternative route that was studied with them to connect with the airport. As Oliver Jacobs said, mostly cycle traffic, to call it one way, is about staff. Passengers naturally do not use cycles to arrive. So it's mostly on that side, and that side is so close now to be so broadly changed that it's more about the assessments that we made with them than a commitment that we can actually take on the land that it's about to change so soon. Okay. But what we can do is, of course, keep encouraging and even expand our programs and policies in terms of staff cycling.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, just to clarify, we've already got that confirmation through the review of the airport service access strategy. So that's already included as one of the heads of terms of the legal agreement.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Clive. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and also it's about Councillor Hussein's wanting to put in a condition as well, that you, as regards probably in the environmental impact section, have an additional condition about tree planting.
Yes.
As well as improving.
Stephen, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for about the airport access strategy. Would it also form part of the travel plan conditions as well? Okay. And secondly, just on, if I may, forgive me, I know this is questions to the applicant, but on Councillor Hussain on his point in relation to those improvements, would that fall within the carbon reduction strategy?
It's not actually in the carbon reduction strategy. The carbon reduction strategy is more about actual impacts on the airport. So it's the things that they control within the airport itself. So that's the buildings, the energy efficiency, the use of the different vehicles. They mentioned scope 1, scope 2, and the elements of scope 3 that they could have controls over. So that it doesn't extend. I would say that. For instance, in Hillingdon Council, which has Heathrow, they would secure, but they've got supplementary planning documents that achieve this, but they would secure tree planting associated with a development that might increase air quality issues, carbon. We don't have a supplementary planning document to that effect. So I wouldn't feel that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I wouldn't feel that for Luton Borough Council that we actually have the mechanism to secure additional tree planting in terms of policy.
Yeah, I think we try to complicate the issue here. I mean, it's just a question of if the airport agree to an additional condition to do some tree planting.
So I think there's 2 points here. Yeah. So from a carbon offsetting point of view, any tree planting would absolutely have to be certified. So it couldn't be accounted for in that way. So I think we treat this separately as part of a broader community piece of work. And I think that's certainly, like I said earlier on in terms of a commitment, that's certainly something that we can look at in terms of those public spaces and how they can be improved, for example, through the use of tree planting.
Yeah, if the airport have agreed.
Yeah, so if there's a condition, what's the difference?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you still need a condition. Yeah, please.
Councillor, it may well not be lawful to put a condition on it because it has to be relevant to planning and it also has to be directly relevant to the application itself. This particular matter is being put forward, as I understand it, in any event, through the community programme, which the airport is putting forward. May I suggest that be the way that's done and you hold them to it?
Can you have that minuted?
Well, that will be minuted, I'm sure, and I see that the airport are all those representatives nodding in relation to that matter. What we don't want, what I don't want to do is to set up a legal problem which might result from conditions which are good ideas. Everybody agrees it's a good idea. The mechanism is the point, Chair.
What I'm trying to say was more of an informal than a formal request. So we're heading in the same direction, but in a different way.
Chair, if I may, I'm more keen in implementation, with all due respect to the QCs and the lawyer, as an ordinary member of public who is not expertise in the legal terms. I want to see the good in terms of the airport commitment to the community it serves and their social responsibility as a people who are operating the airport to improve the areas which are immediately under the fly path. And that would show to the public of Luton, yes, it is economic benefit. Yes, all the other things are acceptable, but it is not acceptable that if you have not a social responsibility to the people whom you are getting a greater benefit, to show them your commitment. That is what I'm asking. How you do it legally is you are the expert, and we rely on you to get the implementation done. Thank you.
Councillor Cushed.
Certainly I would like to echo on my fellow councillors' recommendation, and because we are in the decisive year of climate change, and the amount of people has raised their objections is significant. So it's just not that it's 1,229 letters been sent out, and is in the sport you received 262 people sport you have received, and the objection is about 1,000 people. So it's a significant amount of people. So my request to you that when you need to the reasonable objections, you have to take them on board. And climate change, we have to tackle this. I don't know how the legal team is going to look into these things, but this is something that we have to do it. And it's just not in Luton. We need to tackle this in 3 counties. I remember you've mentioned about okay, we need the economic growth. It's very vital. We have to come out of the recession. But, we have to live as well. If we're not going to be here, then what's the point of everything else? So I believe that, first priority should be the environment. That should be paramount. And the second question is just a clarification point of view. Are we going to observe how many, airplanes we're going to observe on daily basis? More is 3 on daily basis or weekly basis, or that I want to clarify, because I'm not.
Response bit first. To answer the question on.
So thank you for that. I mean, look, we've listened very carefully to the concerns of local residents. We always do. We engage with our communities. We have done throughout this process, and this has been a process of continued consultation that's gone on for 18 months, and we've been open and transparent throughout. We accept that not everyone is obviously going to be in favour of this application, but I think through it we've done our best to address the concerns that have been raised. We believe that the application as it stands is getting the best balance between focusing on putting the airport in the best possible position to recover, but also balancing some of the impacts on the community. And as you heard, there are people that do support this application business groups, the union, of course, employees who work at the airport, and beyond that, our own polling suggests that there is some broad support for this application. But we absolutely do understand the concerns, particularly around climate. But as we've heard through the officers' reports, that this proposal as it stands for an additional 1 million passengers has limited environmental impact. It's not deemed as having a significant additional impact and is not going to impact on the government's targets for carbon jet zero by 2050.
Just to pick up on the flights, so it's an increase of around 0.7% in ATMs, as has been mentioned, which works out at about 3 flights a day when you average that across the year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions. So I heard yesterday that there'd be 1,877 dwellings impacted by a significant increase of 1 to 1.9 decibels during night time. And that to mitigate that, there'll be funds available for noise insulation, so on. I noticed in the Vernon Cole report that it states that there's insufficient funds to cover all of those potentially impacted dwellings. And yet, maybe I misheard you, but I think you said that there was no cap on the funds. So I'd just like to see clarification on that. And then secondly, I think the report states that the increase in passenger numbers wouldn't likely have a huge impact on the number of jobs at the airport because that would be absorbed into existing, existing employment numbers. And yeah, I think you mentioned that there would be an increase in employment as a result of this. So I'd like to see clarification about that as well, please.
So just in terms of the noise insulation scheme, the current permission requires that the airport spend £100,000 a year in noise insulation to mitigate the noise effects. Initially, there was a phasing that was applied per year, which is what Mr. Cole was referring to initially. And that was based around kind of experience on what we see on uptake of that existing noise insulation scheme. So what we said is we'll remove that 100,000 cap, and we've done that in order to try and insulate as many properties as we possibly can in as fast as we can. So that's why we've said remove the cap.
Follow-up question. So does that mean that there would be sufficient funds if it came to that there would be sufficient funds for, say, all 1,877 dwellings?
Yes, that's correct. And just on the jobs question, oh, sorry, I was going to say, can you just clarify the question just once more, please?
Yeah, I think in the report that we have today, it stated that the likely increase, if you like, passenger numbers wouldn't result in a significant increase in jobs at the airport. It'd be absorbed into existing employment levels. But I think, unless I misheard, I think you mentioned that in your speech earlier that there would be an increase in employment. So I just wanted to see clarification on that point.
I think there's two sides to this. I think the first side is, of course, for an additional 1 million passengers, it would require some additional resource. Over the long term, so over a 10-year plus time frame, you might see some efficiency. So therefore, the job number in total longer term might rebalance to a similar number to what it is today or what it was pre-pandemic. I think the bigger point that we're trying to make here is that we can't take for granted that we're just going to naturally gravitate back up to 18 million passengers per annum. There is a very real risk if we're not able to send out a very clear message to airline partners that Luton's open for business, that we might never get back to that number. And then, of course, there will be a real cost to the number of jobs in the long term.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just a couple of things before I ask my question. Apologies for all that tantrum that you had to go through and the language that was used. Secondly, in terms of what Councillor Mahmood had suggested as the, in the correct terminology, the good idea about planting more trees, can I have a minute that it is not just the South Ward that is impacted, that all wards that are impacted or are under the fly zone, which includes Wigmore as well, that those ward councillors are included in any discussions that will take part with that outside of this particular application. Okay, and my question is, I mean, we've established that there's an additional 3 flights a day going up from this passenger increase. Now, obviously, we are talking about impacts on the nighttime noise levels and various impacts. Are these flights during the nighttime or are they during the daytime?
We already have conditions that are placed on us on the maximum number of movements that we can have at night between certain hours, as we covered earlier. So those 3 flights a day could be either day or night, as long as they fit within the nighttime movement cap. So they're still subject to controls from another condition. So if they don't fit within the nighttime due to that condition, then they can only fit in the daytime.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of my question, Darlow Ward, Farley Ward, South Ward, they sit directly under the flight path. These are the most deprived areas in Luton and in the country. Would your plan exacerbate the health inequalities within those wards? That's question number 1 to you. You talked about, I'm going to go on to question number 2. I think it's important that my colleagues' social responsibility that he's spoken about is taken seriously. Question number 2, there's no doubt that the local businesses, CBI and the rest is in favor. I think the economic benefits have been made. But the question was to do with the objectives and what they were objecting to, and I'll repeat. They said, yes, you've been ignoring your noise management plan. You've been ignoring your noise mitigation. You've been ignoring your noise insulation scheme. Why should we believe that this time you're not going to do the same? And I think the question everybody wants to know is, do you see yourselves above the law or you write the law? Thank you, Chair.
But I think on the planning condition question, I think we need to put that into context of the 28 planning conditions that were attached to our original permission. We've remained compliant with all but one of those. That's condition 10, that's the noise condition. As soon as it became apparent that that was the case, we've ensured that we followed due process. We've been open and transparent with our communities and with the local authority about the steps that we had taken to attempt to address this. Regrettably, those steps didn't reduce the contour size as we'd expected, but throughout, we've acted in accordance with the planning rules and we've acted responsibly. We've been open and transparent, and we've followed the planning process.
Okay, so in terms of what the objectors have said, and on page 36, which is the icon code, which says grant planning permission subject to, I'm going to read, I think, number 3 of 1I says, one of the provision and update to the noise alleviation measures, including noise measurement plan, noise mitigation, and noise insulation. What guarantees there that this is something that you're going to do? And for me, I think that's what the objectors want to hear. And until you can give that guarantee, I don't think the council will be in a position to monitor it, because they keep saying, I heard the director of operations say, or development say they're listening. Maybe you're not hearing. The question asked is, are you able to do this? And for me, it's really important that we hear from you how you're going to do this, because it's been a grant planning permission subject to this. How are you going to do that?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We commit to that and we can do that. I'm surprised that objectors are saying that the noise insulation scheme was part of some sort of non-compliance. We were never non-compliant with the noise insulation scheme. We never heard of any complaints about it, and we never refused any insulation request since the planning application was granted in 2014. So I want that to be mitigated as well, because we don't believe that objection is correct. In terms of our commitments, of course, and we are ready to take that commitment until the end. Proof of that is we removed the cap. We increased the proposed sum to be put into place for each one of the properties that are affected, and we are ready to engage with the authorities on the Section 106 agreement to give final form to the implementation of a revised condition in regards to noise insulation scheme.
Good, Chair.
Yeah, it's the insulation scheme as well, the joint consultation
committee,
and then when they implement it.
Yeah.
To clear, is the final comment, is it before we go to the recommendation, or is it just a comment on what being said?
I think when we exhaust the comments.
Sorry.
That's probably the end of the debate. Then we'll move to the vote, yeah.
I use legal. What's this?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just so before it's merged from questions to the applicant to debate. I understand the fluidity to some extent, but it's a point I do want to emphasise, and my computer's just locked. Hang on a sec. So as you're well aware, several representations have been made warning the council of a potential conflict of interests due to its relationship with the airport. Consequently, before you commence the debate, may I remind members that you're acting as a local planning authority, that the application should solely be determined on its planning merits in accordance with national and local planning policy, unless there are material considerations that indicate otherwise. Thank you, Chair.
In terms of comment, I think you owe it as a social responsibility to make sure that you look after the most deprived areas of the town. And as I said earlier on, I know it's not part of the planning merit I'm going to consider the application on, but I think it's really important that you do consider that and be visible within those areas for them to see that you take your social responsibility very seriously. And for me, I think that's something that our colleagues was trying to allude to. We are not going to see that as part of our consideration in terms of planning purposes. But I'm keen to see that that meeting is held. But don't forget, you're going to come here again. And bear that in mind, that we will hold you to account, because the residents of this town will want us to hold you to account in terms of your responsibilities, social responsibilities. And I think you need to take that very seriously. Thank you, Chair.
If I can just come in there, I think it's important to just point out that whilst there may not be specific activity that we can point to tonight in your area and the areas mentioned, we do have an extensive community and social responsibility programme. That includes a charity partnership with Luton Food Bank. That includes the Connect programme in schools, where we go in to give confidence building to young students. We've got the Prince's Trust scheme, Get Into Airports programme, which helps people get to work at the airport. So there are a raft of activities that do take place in Luton on top of the Community Trust Fund that you heard about.
Yeah, your general comments now. Yeah, okay. Can I just ask Councillor Hussain, are you happy to remove your amendment on the advice that we got?
Yes, reluctantly.
And then we've got some kind of a verbal arrangement with the airport.
Yes.
To actually
very reluctant
to pursue the benefits around the airport. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Jay. I think where I would start is in terms of the concern that we all have shown, not only in terms of the climate emergency that we all agree, we also had a concern about in terms of the noise and all the other things. But in terms of the mitigation, if I were to take economic benefit, I mean, regionally, the airport benefits about £957 million in the regional term and the national economy, 28,000 jobs. And in this present climate, I think, we have to take that into account. We also hoping that in terms of the improvement in the aircrafts, that will have a longer term impact in terms of trying to reduce the carbon reduction that we are all hoping for. So I would be, in terms of, probably listening to all the facts and that. I mean, I am very concerned because I do have grandchildren, so nobody in my mind, and I said that in 2012, I like to see an improvement in terms of the climate as well as the carbon reduction is a priority for all of us, not only just for Luton, but I would say nationally and internationally, because we have to tackle that. If we don't tackle that, as my colleague said, we will not have this planet, or the human race will disappear in the longer term. So I take that all into account, but in terms of this application, it is going to be probably a minor impact in 0.7, which is about 3 flights a day. So I will be supporting the recommendation of the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Where do I start? I've written so many notes down now, just piecing them together. We've received via email a lot of objector emails, too many to, I think. But for me, as a person that sits here on a planning committee, I agree with all the objectors yesterday. Not so much as nobody's criticised the councillor's role today, but yesterday on the role of councillors. But as a ward councillor for Dada Ward and a cabinet member, I have to consider the future of Luton residents and the economic, on top of everything else, what I have heard yesterday. For me, supporting Luton's economic recovery from COVID-19, creating and safeguarding jobs, providing much needed learning apprenticeships and opportunities, supporting inward investment opportunities, providing income and funding 15% of councils' frontline services. Previously, 8.5 million in support per year for community groups. I am confident what I have heard from our officers and consultants and reading the agenda pack on noise, climate, air emissions, traffic, talk about air traffic here, and what I've heard tonight from London Luton Operations Limited, alongside, I think, the CBI, Federation of Small Businesses, Luton Rising. I support the proposal to increase passenger capacity to 19 million per annum, since it will ensure future growth needs are accommodated and will enable recovery post-COVID-19 pandemic. The proposal will not just benefit Luton, but also surrounding areas that will generate jobs and benefit businesses in the supply chain in the wider region. And what I'd said, and Councillor was saying earlier on, being a portfolio holder for parks, will be holding those meetings with you regarding the environmental stuff around Wigmore, South Ward, and Dallow and Farley. I will definitely be chasing you up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, we heard lots of representations yesterday about the impact of increased noise. I shared those concerns, and whilst the answers today have alleviated those concerns to a degree, in the confirmation that the funds will be available for all these properties, I'm still not completely convinced that this resolves the issue and the significant impact that this could have on those dwellings. It's difficult. I mean, I can, in relation to the increase in passenger numbers, I completely understand the importance of this and the importance of the airport to the economy of the local area. But this does have to be offset by also the environmental impact and the financial impact that the long-term environmental issues could have on not only the local area, but you know, the wider environment, the wider area. So it is a balance, and I think in balance, I don't think I can support this myself. Certainly at this stage, I'm minded to vote against.
Thank you, Chair. I think whatever the outcome of today's application, there is no doubt that the airport is an important part of the town, and I think you should take that away with yourselves, that the council or any one of us here today do not underestimate the value that you have to our town, and the impact that it has to our town and the surrounding areas and the counties. It's a very difficult one for us, having declared a climate emergency, looking at the facts and figures. I mean, if we were to put it crudely, the fact is that emissions or the environment is, the environmental impact is in the negative, whether to a small degree or to a large degree. If we were to put this in a black and white kind of scenario, there is an impact. So it is fairly difficult for us to reach a decision. I mean, there are two parts to this application. Yes, or personally, I agree, you know, to sustain the airport and where you are coming from, that obviously you need to bring in, incentivize more of the businesses to come in and operate from the town, and hence provide more further work and, you know, contribute to the economy of the town. However, at the same time, you know, we are saying, look, we are also going to have a negative impact on the local environment. A lot, I mean, 1,877 is a lot of households, and you know, it's a fairly difficult one. I mean, whatever decision we reach is not going to be easy. However, rather than telling my answer now, I would like to reserve it until the vote. But I would like to just say that, it is a difficult one. The fact that you've combined the two together does then create more problems for us to reach a decision. But I think the only thing to take away is if you look at it in the sense that, the reservations that we are having today should be an incentive for you to take away to the businesses, to the airlines and say, hang on a minute, I mean, these are the challenges that we are having. And, you're going to have to improve a lot faster than you may want to. I mean, if the saying goes that the client is always right, then those clients of these airlines and yourselves are the local population, are the people that are going to use the airport. And vast majority of those clients would be the ones that have objected yesterday and today and have provided representations. So I think this would further empower yourselves and empower your stance to go back to the airlines and give them a much more robust answer and say, look, I mean, this is the status quo, this is the future where we are going into, and this is what the local population is talking about, and this is what they expect of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We all know that we don't live in a perfect world. We have to make changes, which is, fit around the circumstances, and we have to adapt as a human being. Personally, looking at the way Luton Airport is contributing 300,000. So what was the amount? £400 per minute. So it's a huge amount, and we have to look at the wider picture. And in order to achieve the 2040 vision, I understand that we have to, look for the, expansions, and because we look at the growth, the way, the population is growing. So we have to, undermine all those sorts of factors. I certainly supporting that, but subject to what, commitments you're going to make in relation to the environmental effects, to the climate change, and, with the time scales, rather than making a broader statements. Yes, we will do that in, in 2028, then it's too late. So I've got full confidence in your approach, but I want to see, a commitments with the realistic dates. Thank you. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
I think for me, the advice from Mr. Cole, who is the expert, is weighing heavily on my mind. And at this point, I think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Thank you, Chair.
But before we go to the vote, I'll just make some comments. And I'd just like to thank all the officers for the hard work they put in over many, many months in preparing these reports. And to all those people that responded. It's good that democracy does in fact work, and it exists in Luton. And I've certainly read all the objections for and against. Excuse me. But the reality is, climate change is still prominent in everyone's mind. There's an impact, no doubt about it. I'm not a climate change denier, but it has to be done progressively. And I think the airport has made that commitment. Oh, excuse me. But we can only determine this application on planning grounds, not on emotional grounds. And, the airport can still operate up to 18 million passengers on the old permission. And if we change people's behaviour when it comes to climate change activity, we're not asking people to stop driving cars. We're just saying stop driving diesel and petrol, drive electric instead. But I'm convinced now, more than ever, that the economic benefits outweigh the environmental impact on this, and I'll be moving the resolution to grant permission. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
We'll move to the vote while I have another drink. Yeah, if you do the honours.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ackley.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ali.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Bridgen.
Against.
Councillor Donnellan.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Abbas Hussain.
For.
Councillor M Hussain.
For.
Councillor Kirsch. Thank you. Councillor Masood.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Taylor.
For. So that's 7 for and 2 against. Planning permission has been granted. Thank you very much. Subject to the conditions. Thank you very much.